What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Landry Hat podcast powered by FanSided. I am your host, Zach. You can listen to the Landry Hat wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure you like this video, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode this Cowboys offseason, because it only gets more fun from here, honestly. The Super Bowl is over with. Coaching staffs are almost filled out or completely filled out. The Cowboys just put together their final defensive coaching staff. And in today's episode of the Landry Hat podcast, I want to talk about Christian Parker a little bit more. He just had his press conference, his first time talking to the media after the staff was filled out. They gave him a little bit of time to get everybody for his defensive staff. Obviously, a lot goes into that. They hired a bunch of different people. Making sure that those guys are in place to help a first-time defensive coordinator is super, super important. And I wanted to discuss some things that he talked about at the presser, what those things could look like for this Cowboys defense, how they make a difference. Obviously, some big revelations with structurally going to a 3-4 instead of a 4-3, which the Cowboys have been in for literally ever. But before we do that, let's go over just a couple house cleaning things really quick. My name is Zach. If you haven't been here before, watch the Landry Hat channel. Thank you so much to FanSided again for having me host the podcast here on YouTube and everywhere that you get your podcast. If you could, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more episodes just like this. I also talk Cowboys on my own YouTube channel at Double Move. So if you somehow can listen to me talk for this long and still want more Cowboys content and more of me talking about it, you can do that. Shout out to all of you. Give me a follow over there. And for Apple Podcasts, Spotify, leave us a 5-star review. You guys are the reason that we're moving up the charts for Cowboys podcast, and we're extremely grateful for that. So let's not waste any more time and talk about Christian Parker and some of my impressions of him, things that I liked, things that he said. And there's one, I don't know how into the weeds I'm going to get, but there is one thing in particular, a quote that he had about a position on the defense that has the utmost importance. And it's kind of got me wondering what their plans are going to be in the draft. I think Christian Parker is going to have quite a bit of say when it comes to those two first-round picks. We saw what happened when the Eagles got Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Those guys turned out to be excellent players. Parker, I'm sure, was in the room when they were discussing those options, talked to Vic Fangio, what they were trying to do defensively, all of that. And just my initial impressions of him and what it means for the defense going forward. Because this defense, they have to get back on track. If you're a Cowboys fan, this is what you're relying on to get back to a Super Bowl. This defense is what's holding this team back from fully opening their Super Bowl window, which could be closing rather soon with Dak Prescott's deal running out, assuming that they don't extend him, which I don't know why they wouldn't, but Ceedee Lamb's in the prime of his career. You have George Pickens, the offensive line. All 5 of those guys are going to be back for 2026. Presumably, they keep Terrence Steele. The defense is the number one thing. So let's start with my first takeaway and just thoughts on the press conference. The tone and identity that Christian Parker had. That was the first thing that I noticed. He was calm and very detailed for a media interview. You know how some coordinators and coaches can get up there and be like, yeah, we just got to do this better. We got to do that better. Christian Parker immediately came out in like the first minute and a half and was like, yeah, we're going to be structurally a 3-4. We're going to have different nuances. We're going to do things that work for the players, work best for them, and we're not going to be this rigid scheme. We're going to be a 3-4 by nature, but we can also move some things around, move some pieces around, and do different things based on who we're playing. But from him talking, I got the impression that he's someone that is all business, studies the game down to the very last detail, a true student of the game. Obviously came up through the NFL, working with Vic Fangio, working with a lot of different players, a lot of different teams, a lot of different organizations, personnel, and that's a really good thing. He's not an older coach. He's like 34, 35 years old, but still has 8 years of NFL experience. In 8 years, honestly, for him to get from a quality control coach on defense up to a defensive coordinator in the span of 8 years is super, super impressive. And I think it speaks to how people have seen him work over the past decade in the film room, working with guys, bringing his ideas to the table. I'm sure in Philadelphia, Vic Fangio probably has a lot of great things to say about him. Cooper DeJean was really sad to see him go. He accredited his success to Christian Parker, saying that he wouldn't be the player that he was without him. He also seems laid back, calm, very in control of what he's wanting to talk about, in control of the room, just kind of takes it over every time he starts talking. You feel like you're going to learn something, and you just listen to him, key in on what he's saying, and I really, really like that. Super confident in what he's talking about. Aside from the age difference, I'm going to try not to do this too much in this podcast episode, but comparing him to Matt Eberflus, aside from the obvious age gap, which is about 20 years, 25 years, it feels like he's more willing to get up there and share the intricacies of the game, explain what they're going to do, say all of the buzzwords that we want to hear, which is awesome to hear in the way that he talks. He's throwing out those words that people on Twitter and here on YouTube, I 100% believe him when he says those things. He's not just saying the buzzwords just to say them. He knows how he's going to incorporate them into this defense, attacking the weaknesses of the opposing offense, being multiple, simulated pressures. He talked extensively about the meaning of a nickel defender in his defense. He got up there and talked his game, alluded to doing things a little bit different. He has his own ideas and philosophies that are built around what he learned with Vic Fangio, a younger mind. I mean, we've all had bosses or people that we know that we work under, and they have this one idea of things that they do, and it works well. We're in that same tree working with them, but we're also in the back of our mind saying, okay, well, if I was the owner, or if I was the head manager, I would probably do it this way. I think it would work better doing it this way. And a lot of the times, it probably would. Just having a fresh mind and a fresh idea that isn't necessarily over the entire defense in Philadelphia. He's in the back of his mind saying, okay, well, I think we could add this or do this different, but Vic has his way of doing things and it works for him. But I could maybe make these tweaks here and there to make things better. And I got a lot of Brian Schottenheimer vibes from when he was hired in his presser as the head coach. We heard the offensive buzzwords being thrown around. We heard motion. We heard being multiple, being able to run different things out of the same sets, being aggressive. And I wondered at the time if that was just him throwing out those words. And it wasn't. Brian Schottenheimer was the offensive coordinator under Mike McCarthy. We complained and we talked about all of these things, and they didn't do it because Mike McCarthy was the play caller. He was the head coach. Really, whatever he was comfortable with is what the Cowboys were going to run. It didn't matter if Brian Schottenheimer was like, well, I think we could do things like this, this, and this. It just never happened because he wasn't in charge. McCarthy was coaching for his job, so it was going to go that way, and then Shotty just had to kind of throw his ideas here and there, and if they stuck, they stuck. If they didn't, they didn't. Comes in as the head coach, and the play caller brings in Clayton Adams, who probably has a lot more to do with the offensive game plan than Shotty did when he was the offensive coordinator, and you get a completely different offense. I get the same vibes. You're hearing the words that you want to hear from Christian Parker. Based on how Shotty has talked about the game, he's got a younger man's mind. I think that's why they went with Christian Parker in a lot of ways. Shotty knows you have to get younger. These younger guys coming in have studied the game since they were probably 10 years old. They don't get the opportunities a lot of the times, especially with the Cowboys, because Jerry and Steven and Will like to lean back on, well, this guy won a Super Bowl, or this guy coached a team to the NFC or AFC championship game. He obviously knows what he's doing, when in reality, it's becoming a younger man's game. It's about scheme. It's chess piece against chess piece, and you got to figure out the best way to use your best players. I felt the same thing listening to Christian Parker talk as I did when Brian Schottenheimer got hired as the head coach. It feels like a philosophical shift on defense, an identity shift, and in that, you're going to get a huge schematic shift, one that gives you an actual advantage in today's NFL, because you cannot win in the NFL without good coaching. Just look at who was in the NFC Championship game, who was in the AFC Championship game. The Bills. I know Josh Allen fumbled 4 times, but they got rid of Sean McDermott because they felt like they couldn't get over the hump because they weren't getting a schematic advantage. Look at the Seattle Seahawks with Mike McDonald. That defense is disgusting. What did they do in the Super Bowl against Drake May? They realized that the Patriots struggled with corner blitzes. What did they do all game long? They blitzed Devon Witherspoon more times in that game than they did in the previous 10 games. He blitzed half of his season total in one game because the head coach looked at the film and said they really struggle with that. That's what Christian Parker was talking about. If they struggle picking up corner blitzes, especially at the running back spot, or the running back, eyes are late to this side or that side, we're going to attack that weakness, and you just have to have it in today's NFL. Takeaway number 2. I love how he talked about structure for the defense. Discipline, multiplicity, vision, communication, leverage, the little things, the things you have to get right to be a good defense. Quite frankly, things they were not good at last year. Things they just couldn't get right. They couldn't communicate. They couldn't be disciplined. They weren't seeing things correctly. He emphasized how he was going to incorporate the structure of this defense and teach it to those guys. Shoddy harped on it all throughout the process once they fired Matt Eberflus, or even when Eberflus is here. We want to be teachers. We want to teach these guys. We want them to understand what we're saying, why we have them doing things the way that we are. And then Parker got up there and did the exact same thing. We're going to get in the classroom. I'm going to realize that every single guy learns differently. Some guys you have to let burn their hand on the stove and just watch them do it for them to understand, okay, that's why you're teaching me like that. Other guys just need to get in the film room and you pull up a PowerPoint presentation or a Kahoot, which is just crazy if you're around my age. I talked about this in one of my YouTube videos. He talked about things that he can do to help guys with the scheme and helping learn. And he said Kahoot, which is like this app or website where you can get on there and make your own quizzes, and then everybody in the class, it gets on their phones and clicks the answer, and it tells you a percentage that got it right, a percentage that got it wrong. I just thought it was hilarious. I was not expecting a NFL coach to be like, yeah, we'll get in the classroom, we'll do some Kahoots. We'll do a Kahoot. I was like, that's absolutely insane, which makes sense. He's 34 years old. I'm sure that, he's less than 10 years older than me. So he would have been... He would have probably been in high school around the time that Kahoot became a big thing. It's been a thing for the past probably 10 or 15 years. So yeah, kind of makes sense. Man, I'm getting old. I feel like I'm getting old. Okay, so teacher, just the intricacies, the structure that he was really harping on throughout his presser really gets me excited for what this defense could be, because it didn't feel like last year they had the structure. They couldn't put it together. They couldn't put it all together. I said that it felt like there were games to where every single play, at least 2 or 3 guys would lose. 2 or 3 guys wouldn't be in the right spot. 2 or 3 guys wouldn't have their eyes in the right spot. The corner isn't supposed to get a free release here, but he is. And then there's not safety help over the top, or this guy's playing down in the flat when he's supposed to be carrying the receiver up the field. Every single game, it felt like there was 2 or 3 guys every play that just could not get it right. So structure, the little things, structurally, what are they running on defense? And that is going to be a 3-4. That means you're going to get those true odd fronts. You're going to have 4-eye technique guys instead of your traditional 4-3 where you have those edge defenders. It's something that we haven't seen from this personnel group. When the Cowboys were in their 4-3, you had your 1 tech and your 3 tech. Now you're going to have your nose and your 4s or 5s, and then you're going to have your outside linebackers, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. Parker's going to be leaning towards that Fangio adjacent scheme. So those 4 guys, those 4-eye guys, are going to have to be able to read the tackle, control the B gap first, Gonna have to play inside, maybe even 2-gap here and there based on the philosophy and how he's teaching it. We don't know that. We probably won't know that. Think about the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've run a 3-4 defense forever. TJ Watt as a stand-up outside linebacker. Sometimes he drops back into coverage. A lot of the time he's rushing the passer. Opposite of him, you have a really balanced player in Alex Highsmith that is playing well against the run and also being able to get after the passer. It works personnel-wise with how the NFL is going. I mean, there are teams around the league that succeed with that exact same structure. He also said it's going to be by nature a 3-4, but we're also going to do some things with 4-3 and the nickel and the 4-2-5. But I do find it interesting with what they plan on doing with those guys because it calls for a different skill set. You're going to need a nose tackle. Who is the Cowboys nose tackle? Because Quinnen and Kenny Clark and Osa Odigizua are traditionally 3 techs. I guess you could move them over to the 4. I don't know what they're planning on doing. That's something we're going to have to wait until training camp or we get into the season to figure out how they're going to make those odd fronts. 5 guys on the line of scrimmage. Where's Quinnen at? Where's Osa at? Where's Kenny Clark at? Is Jay Toia in the mix at all because he's a big body that could play at the nose spot? I guess we're going to have to wait and see.
Breaks, buzzer beaters, and block parties are back, and Underdog is the best place to get in on all the action. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like points, rebounds, steals, and more. Get your picks right and you can win up to 5,000 times your cash. It's been a difficult season for the Mavericks to take on the Timberwolves of Minnesota on Friday night. Nevertheless, I'm looking at PJ Washington for higher than 15.5 points. And Rudy Gobert for lower than 10.5 points. Gobert scored just 6 points the last time out against the Mavericks. Cooper Flagg is out for Dallas, which will create that many more shooting opportunities for Washington, who poured in 18 points in the Mavs' final game before the All-Star break. Download the app today and use the promo code Landry to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code Landry. Underdog, make picks, win money.
Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado. Forcing games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concern with your play? Call 1-800-MY-RESET or 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncbgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783 or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. New York, call it 24/7-HOPE-LINE at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
3-4 versus 4-3 is a lot different and a completely different conversation than it was 25 or 30 years ago, because it's not just like Madden where it's 3-4 versus 4-3. It's going to be a lot about how Christian Parker is assigning and protecting each gap. Guys are going to have different assignments than in the past with a 4-3. Some guys are going to be 2-gapping. Some guys are going to be single gaps. There's a ton of different ways that he's going to be able to implement that. A really interesting conversation to have is about the edge room, because you're gonna have to ask for different things from a true 3-4 outside linebacker than you were in a 4-3 with those defensive ends. It's going to be more stand-up alignments, being able to drop into coverage, more simulated pressure roles. It's going to be important when the draft comes around, because who are the guys that can work in that outside linebacker role? They're going to be standing up. They're going to align outside the tackles, sometimes in a 5, sometimes a little bit wider. They're technically a linebacker in a 3-4, but they rush, they set the edge, and they occasionally drop into coverage. It's kind of like a hybrid defender in structure, and it's going to take some different bodies, I think, than what we've seen the Cowboys have at edge in the past. So I guess we're going to have to wait and see, what do they do with the defensive interior? What do they do with their edge players? Obviously, linebacker is going to be a spot. You're going to need those guys to be able to stack and shed and get off blocks, get to the ball, fill their run gaps and stuff like that. But I want to focus on Christian Parker's quote about the nickel position. He made a very fun, interesting point about that spot. Parker said, quote, "Very important. That guy, he's a corner sometimes, he's a safety sometimes, he's a backer sometimes. He's a defensive end when he's blitzing. You want to have a guy who has natural instincts and ability to feel the game and play football. He's usually a guy who, if you were playing football on a Saturday afternoon in the neighborhood, he's your first round draft pick just because he feels the game naturally. That's definitely an important guy to a good defense." A lot of today's modern 3-4 is really playing nickel with 5 defensive backs on the field. Obviously, that doesn't give you didn't used to give you an advantage in the older days when it was a lot of ground and pound football, big bodies on the line of scrimmage. Look at what the Eagles did with Cooper DeJean. That's the type of role that you have to think about. Who's the guy that can do all of these different things? Be a corner, be a safety, be a linebacker. And I'm trying to decide if I should really talk about it right now. But when he said that, and I read the quote later on, I literally thought to myself, this sounds like Dylan Thieneman from Oregon. And maybe me and Foots can talk about that in a later episode when we start talking even more draft, because now that we know what the Cowboys are going to do defensively, kind of have an idea of the players that they're looking for. Are you going to get a safety to play in that nickel role? Are you going to ask him to come up and play man coverage on a slot receiver or a tight end and do those things and blitz? Or are you going to have a corner be that nickel spot who's a little bit smaller of a body, maybe moves better but doesn't help you as much in the run game, can't really play linebacker because he's smaller? Dylan Thieneman did all of that at Oregon, all of it. And it seems like a really cheap comp with Cooper DeJean, but I just kind of get those vibes. Thieneman is going to blow up the combine. People are going to be really excited about him. I'm not saying that they're taking him at 12, but if Parker really wants that kind of guy on his defense, that nickel player that can play linebacker. Thieneman did it at Oregon. That can play in the cover in the slot. Did that at Oregon. Can play over the top, play on the roof, play corner sometimes. So I'm not gonna keep harping on that, because I do want to have a full conversation with Foots and kind of get his thoughts. I just thought it was interesting that he really went into depth on the importance of that position, because right now I'm not sure the Cowboys have that guy on their team. I did hear some whispers about maybe that being Marquise Bell. Some people, the coaching staff, are excited about what Marquise Bell can do. He got a 3-year, $8 million contract, I think, at the end of last season. Really didn't get on the field a whole lot this year until injuries started piling up, and the Cowboys kind of had to force him to be out there. Eberflus, we saw some things that he did in coverage, trying to cover in the slot, trying to run with Amon-Ra St. Brown or cover a tight end, and it didn't happen. I really hope that they're not going to rely on Bell to be that guy, because I think in this draft, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, Dylan Thieneman, Caleb Downs, those guys can play that role and be the player that Christian Parker wants them to be. Maybe their backup plan is Marquise Bell. Maybe they go into the draft telling all of us, well, we think Bell can be that nickel player, and then you have one of those guys fall into your lap. Is 12 a bit rich? Maybe, but it's becoming such an important position. It's pretty much a starting position in today's NFL, and having that guy is really, really important in a modern 3-4 defense that's playing nickel most of the time. I can't wait until we hear some conversations about what they're thinking in the draft, who they're being. Although the Cowboys do a pretty good job of not giving up who they're going to pick. I didn't even know Tyler Booker was on the radar, and he got taken at 12. So I guess it's always possible. So the back end is going to be interesting with the cornerbacks. You're going to have a lot of split safety looks. You're going to be playing quarters, cover 6. What does that mean for the guys that you have on the team? What's their plan with Savon Ravel and Deron Bland if they're looking at drafting a corner at 12? Maybe it's Mansour Delane. Maybe it's Jermode McCoy, who is a particularly man coverage corner. What are they going to do there? I can't wait to hear more about their draft wishes, or who they're looking at, who they're being tied to. So that's a couple of things from Christian Parker's conversation with the media, his press conference. I loved it. I think he said everything that we wanted to hear. He talked about what they were going to be in nature, talked about being multiple different, basing the game plan on who they're playing, what are their strengths, what are their advantages, or what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, being able to attack those weaknesses, not just giving up everything underneath, giving the offense multiple things to think about, being able to switch up their looks, playing nickel, the importance of that position. I think that this was the correct move. This was a complete identity shift from what they've seen. And I wanted to share this with you guys. Adam Schefter tweeted this out, sharing the Cowboys finalized 2026 staff. This is how different their defensive staff is this year. Defensive coordinator is first year with the Cowboys. Defensive pass game coordinator and DBs coach first year. Assistant defensive line coach first year. Assistant linebackers coach J.J. Clark did stay around from Eberflus's staff. It's his second year. Defensive line assistant secondary inside outside linebackers coach. All of those guys are first year. And listen to this. Cowboys experience, it's their first year. NFL experience, Christian Parker is in his 8th year in the NFL. Defensive pass game coordinator Derek Ainsley, who I also really like and we've talked about previously, is in his 9th year. After that, that's going to be his right-hand man. That's the guy that he's going to go to. That's the guy that he's trusting to coach up the DBs and kind of lead that group now that he's the defensive coordinator and he's not going to be able to be with them as much. That has to be his right-hand man. After that, first year in the NFL, second year in the NFL, 6th year, 4th year, 4th year, first year, first year. That is not a ton of experience defensively. This feels like an identity shift because of Schematic. Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, how they've ran these coaching searches, how they've looked for their next defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, head coach. They've liked guys that have been in the league for maybe 10 to 12 years, and then when they hire and fill out their staff, they bring in guys that have been in the league for 8, 9, 10, 11. Just look at Mike McCarthy in Pittsburgh. He brought a guy in for his offensive coordinator job that has been in the league for like 12 or 13 years. I had never heard his name. He worked with the Minnesota Vikings. When Mike McCarthy first got hired as the Cowboys head coach, who did he hire as the defensive coordinator? Mike Nolan, a guy that he had worked with. Who did he hire as the quarterback coach? It was Scott Tolzien. It's just what coaches do. This doesn't feel like that. Christian Parker said it as well. We didn't really talk before this. I met him once. We shook hands briefly, shared some pleasantries, and then we moved on. And then I got the call for this job. We talked, and now we're here. That is how you find the best candidate. You don't hire friends. You don't hire people you know. You don't hire this guy because he did you a favor 10 or 15 years ago. You hire the best guy for the job. And that makes me excited. Just based on the calm demeanor of Christian Parker, the student of the game that he seems to be, and I think he really is. I don't know how you can't be excited about this hire because the 2026 defense either makes or breaks your window for that year. The offense, if they keep George Pickens around, if they can keep everything intact, maybe they change up the running back spot, maybe they bring Javonte back, everything offensively is going to be set. We know how good that group was this year. Can they get to average on defense? And then I think you're cooking and probably in the playoffs and you have a chance just to get into the dance. Wow. Didn't mean to rhyme to end off this show, but thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more Cowboys content just like this. And I will see you guys next time. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anything like that, give us 5 stars if you enjoyed today's episode. I'll see you guys next time. I love you all.